Welcome to the test kitchen. Today we are going to do exactly what the astronauts do before they plan their menus. We will be testing several things. Let me get to the right slide so we can get started. What questions would you ask during a taste test? So what is a taste test? Basically you're sitting around the table just as you see in the picture. Those are astronauts and they are sitting around the table and they are testing different foods that they will have to eat or could potentially eat for a very long mission. Some missions are 7 days, some missions are 14 days, some are 3 months, some are 6 months, some are a year. When we go to places like Mars, they will be very long. They could be a couple of years at a time. Keep in mind, it takes about 6 months to get to Mars. So what questions do you think you would ask during a taste test? I want you to pause the video just for a second, and I want you to think, what would you ask during a taste test? Remember, talk about it with your crew, and then we'll come back in just a few seconds to figure out if these are some good questions. I'll be right back with you. Okay, we're back again, and what we'll do now is go through some of the questions that you might want to ask during a taste test. One thing to think about is food that's going on the space station or food that's going to space. It's going to have to be light weight, and we're going to do a special lab tomorrow from my kitchen that I think will help you understand that a little bit easier. The food has to be easy to prepare. If it's very complicated, they don't have the equipment on the space station or going on any of the spacecraft. They don't have the equipment that's needed to do elaborate and very detailed meals. Now, the other thing to think about, can it be stored for a very long period of time? So think about what we learned about bread and tortillas yesterday. Does it create crumbs? If there's any crumbs, it cannot be used. So that's something else that when you're testing, is it going to create a crumb? So if you're testing foods today, which I hope you are, then that's something to consider. If it's crumbly or messy, it's probably not going to be a good idea. Can it travel well? Can it be transported on a spacecraft up to the space station or out to Mars? It needs to be able to travel well because think about it, it can't be a glass jar. It could break along the way. So that's just something to think about. Also, can it be made into small serving sizes? That means if you're going to have a cookie, you might only be able to do 2 cookies at a time, and that would be a serving size. So that means it can't be like a box of cookies. It can't be a box of cereal. It has to be small serving sizes so you have a packet for your meal, and then or a couple of packets for your meal, and then you go from there. So those are things to think about before you get started. Now, the next thing you need to keep in mind is when you do the taste test, I need for you to wait for the teacher to tell you it's time to sample. Also, as you're doing your taste test, you don't want to share your opinion with somebody else. Keep it to yourself. So the reason for that is you don't want to persuade somebody to not agree with you. I want you to write your thoughts in your notebook as you're tasting. So do it like you're an astronaut and taste it. Notice if it's crumbly, if it's messy, if it can be transported, and make your own observations. This is great time for some reflection and some note taking. And then, last but not least, your final thoughts after you're done. Imagine that the taste test you do would determine the amount of food that you would eat for the entire mission. Again, those missions can go a long time. If the choice was peanut butter and jelly, could you live on peanut butter and jelly and enjoy it for a year? I couldn't. So I might have to do something different, maybe like green beans or seaweed or something like that, especially rice. I love rice. So would you be able to eat the same foods every 7 days for 6 months, for a year, or longer? So those are some things to think about as you make your final observations in your notebook. I hope you have a fun time with this. I'm looking forward to checking back to see what you thought.